Hello, 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 Drink Less, Feel Fresh listeners and absolute legends. Tommy Cartwright here, friend of Drink Less, Feel Fresh with the incredibly talented Nat Hodges. How are you, Nat?
Good man, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, mate. Today we're diving into a topic that we'll probably cover hundreds of times in many different ways. And we're just going to hit the ground running by saying underneath a high alcohol intake, underneath most surface level substance abuse addictions, there is one deeper attachment that connects all of us, and that attachment is attachment to other people and relationships. Nat, where do you even start this conversation?
Well, that's a really good question. That's a really good. I like to start with my common entry point into this conversation, which is in our culture, what we do is we attach and we addict. That's what we do. And some of the deepest ways we get attached is to other people, because that's where the source of life is. Seriously, the source of life is what we share with another person at every single level.
Nat, for some listeners that may not have listened to many of our other episodes yet, when we say those words attach and addict, what are we referring to? What is the construct of attaching and addicting?
Yeah, something where experientially it's essentially something that is the puppet string of you. It has control of you. Simple as that. If you want to use your free will to make a choice and you can't, there you go.
Geez, it's a nice way to normalize it, because I'm assuming everyone's listening going, oh, and
Yep.
then there's 100 things going through their heads that they feel that they could not stop if they wanted to.
And not only that, I think another thing to important here is that example. Okay, I want to have free choice, but I can't in this moment. And I mean free choice, I mean free choice as in how I want to present myself, what I want to say, what I want to do. Right? It's just that central choice. If that's taken away by something, which happens, it's everyone and every day. We're taken away by things all the time, and this starts the other conversation where you can. It doesn't matter whether it's a really, really strong and deep attachment forming an addiction, or whether it's, geez, I want my cuppa every morning. The exact same process, just different intensity. And that gets all the way down into, I don't want to think this way anymore. And then you've got the same thing to deal with on a different intensity. Like it's.
It's almost worth, we haven't really thought that way before, mate. It might be worth putting some slides together for one of our webinars that'll be coming up on the intensity of attachment as a scale.
Did you just create more work for me, as you do every time I open my mouth? Every time. Can you do some of that? No.
Don't say such
I'm
good
here
stuff.
To talk and relate, and every now and then I'll do some hard stuff. Okay.
When I hear that, I'm like, great, I just got permission to stack his workload. he loves it, listeners. If
I'm
you're
so
listening
far
to this
behind. I'm so far behind. I panic.
That's like, I'm inundated with deliverables this week, Tom, and I'm like, well, what about this webinar we could run on
literally
the intensity of attachment styles?
Yes, cool.
So if you ever hear Nat speaking less, that's his way of telling me I'm not going to speak today, Tom, because I don't want more work. Oh, I love it. That this is it's a pretty simple, straight down the line question, but how would one become aware? Like what we really want to talk about today is the concept of realizing when
suffering,
relationships,
suffering. That's how you become aware.
Yeah, love it. That probably is the answer, right? But I will ask the question because a lot of people will be listening like, what do you mean talking about? At the end of the day, how do you know not only when you're attached to someone, but when you're attached to someone in a relationship that is outgrown itself? It's not meant to exist anymore. And I think that's such a great concept to even realize. I said this to you this morning when we were speaking, that like relationships are so often they're seasonal. And a lot of people just have a blanket statement that relationships are lifelong.
Yeah, that's the definitely only wrong thing.
yeah,
seriously, so that statement is the only wrong way to think about relationships.
It's interesting as well, because I've experienced that. I've let go of heaps of school friends and people that I grew up with, but I tell you right now, there's still a couple of friends that I physically let go of, but every now and then I still feel a little guilt. I'm like, did I do enough for that person? Just because I grew, should I be helping them? Like,
oh, really? See, this isn't this side of the conversation. I've learnt over the years that it's a phenomena that happens. People grow apart, and then they've got to deal with that that gap, right? But it took me to see that in other people. I've never felt it myself. How weird. I must be psychopathic or something. But I was like, I must be broken, because I'm like, I have never ever thought, have I done enough with someone else? Does that make me a horrible person?
Yes, okay. You're a bad man, and we're getting a replacement at DLFF for you. But it wouldn't matter, because Nat still wouldn't think anything of it.
Yeah, that's so sweet. They must have needed me.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's similar. It's it probably really ties in nicely, because it's no different to the alcohol. We know people that have been sober 10 years, but they're still worrying about the alcohol on a day-to-day basis. I just gave the example of, I know people that I haven't spoken to in years, but every now and then I'll still think of them and think, was that a good decision that I made to have them out of my life?
Can I have a crack at explaining this phenomena, Tommy, in a decent way?
Yes.
Okay. So, because it's one of those weird human things where that process actually kind of disrupts us, because it doesn't feel very rational. Like, why am I still thinking about this person? Where did it come from? What's happening? It doesn't feel in line with our models of life. So it kind of messes us up a little bit. Does that make sense?
Go on, keep talking. It'll unfold.
Okay, sweet. So there's a process called cathexis. And cathexis is when you connect with something, anything, doesn't matter, object, person, alcohol, substance. It can even be experience. You can even attach to experience. So side note, with substances, you might be attached to the chemical, or you might be attached to the experience. Different process. But cathexis is when you invest something emotionally of yourself into that thing that's quote unquote not you. So you take some of your emotions and you inject it into this thing, and there's a relationship formed. A relationship is formed because you have given yourself, literally, you've given yourself emotionally to something that you don't have charge of. And so you go on with your life, but this little bit of self has left this tiny little tether to you. And that's called cathexis. It's where we drop little bits of emotion, which is little parts of ourself along the way. And then we get these weird kind of wobbly thought feelings where it's like things pop up out of nowhere. Does that make sense?
Oh, so yeah, you're pretty. Does that explains very simply the thought of, I wish I could go back to.
Yeah. That is it exactly. Yeah, it's like the better way to think about it is, there's some of me back there. I need to go sort that out.
Yeah, gotcha. Something's not resolved, or something's untied, or even when you say it, I'm like, oh, makes sense. Like, everyone's been on a holiday, and then some of us have been on a holiday where it's like you come back and you can't stop thinking about coming back there. And I'm thinking, wow, I think
you invested too much of yourself in the process. Like, this is when people, I just want to go let my hair down. That's saying, like, they let themselves go so much that, like, to come back into the real world is impossible. Very hard.
Insert the addiction of the experience of alcohol.
Yeah, there you go.
Only way. Yes. Yeah.
There's pouring. Go for it.
Now, why is this so important to understand? Because we just went pretty deep on that, which I love. But like, why is this so important to understand when it comes to surface level navigating life and realizing that one of the leading, if not the largest leading contributor that influences you more than anything when it comes to the behavior patterns that you do are your top closest people that you spend most of your time with? Why is it so important to understand this when it comes to someone who's listening to this podcast thinking, oh, I've just really got this issue with alcohol, and maybe realizing, well, hang on a second, what's going on in my relationships?
Yep. Relationships are the thing in life that sensitizes us and makes us vulnerable the most, hands down. Okay, so that's the space. That's the space where you're going to feel vulnerable. And if you're not in relationships and not feeling vulnerable, then that space is causing you to harden up and rigidify yourself. So it is the beating heart of life is what happens in relationship. So whatever happens in relationship is what happens to you.
Can you say that again?
Whatever's happening in your relationships, in the space of relationship, you might have no relationships, which is a form of relationship. What I'm saying is, what is happening in the dynamic of how we are relating to other people is the shadow of our life, literally.
Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? Nat, I was having a session with one of our awesome private clients. I'll replace her name for privacy. I'll say it's Sarah. and Sarah was having this conversation with me about how everything's going really well, but like she's feeling that it's kind of going to slip soon, which was interesting. She's like, no, it's going great. I'm in the best spot that I've ever been, but I just feel like maybe something will happen.
Yeah.
And I said, tell me about what you're experiencing. And Sarah started to share within like 3 minutes, she had no idea, 3 different examples of 3 different friends in her life. And what connected the dots as a specialist, I was like, did you realize that in that story, you shared 3 different friends that are struggling, and 3 different assumptions that you've got to help them through their struggles?
Yeah. Nice one. Perfect.
And she was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, and I just gave it to her because we've been working with her for a while, and I just gave it to her pretty black and white. It's probably a lesson that everyone needs to understand. It's not a judgment. But I said, it just sounds like you're the biggest fish in your pond at the moment. And she was like, what do you mean? I'm like, who are the people that are challenging you? Who are the people that are making you vulnerable, as you said? Who are the people that are helping you get through your stuff? And she just paused and she was like, I think she said to me, holy shit.
Yeah, and I was like, jumped on the bandwagon.
Yeah, she just goes, oh my God, every single one of my friends are people that I'm feeling like I need to support to bring them on the journey with me. And that was like, we worked together for a long time, and that was just a huge observation for her to be like, wow, I'm a big fish in a small pond. I've outgrown my pond, but I'm not prepared to let go of, to be honest, not prepared to let go of the friendships. Scary place to be. I said to her what you said. I said, look, if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree or to grow up thinking it's an idiot, you can feel free and in control the majority of your life. But if your top 4 to 5 closest friends are struggling, give it maybe 3 to 6 months and you'll be there.
Yeah, for sure. It's a vortex, because it's how friendships are formed, and it's hard. It's really, really hard to see how do you keep the togetherness in the relationship, but how do you stay really autonomous as well? Like that's a language thing. I really do believe that's a language thing of like, sorry, I cut you off. Go for it.
No, it's just so fitting. Like I think the questions people need to ask themselves is, which friendships have outgrown themselves? Because the more we hang on to it, the more damage we do, right? Like I always say to people, you're better off leaving and exiting a friendship on good terms than building up resentment and then hating each other. And I think that happens far too often in this world, especially with the alcohol reduction industry. Like you hear these stories like, well, they didn't support me, and we used to be big drinkers, and then I was sober, and then they didn't like that, or vice versa. And it's like, oh God, there's a lot of dysfunctional social and friendship breaking when it doesn't need to be. People just become, if we can challenge ourselves to become more and more aware of when friendships, not even friendships, family ships, membership, like people in the family, friends, cousins, like it could be blood related, when it's seasonal, meant to come for a small period of time. Now, before we wrap up, because I wanted to leave this one pretty short and sharp to let people ponder this idea, but
nice.
I wanted to leave them with something that you shared last week on one of your videos. And I just want you to, if you can, do your best just to tie what you were sharing there in regards to friendships. Relationships. About the one space and how that might apply here. Because I think it provides, when I was watching that video, it provided a lot of comfort, to be honest, in realizing that space can be here. And even if you let it go, it'll always be that space. Like, I just really like that. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, it actually ties back into what we were talking about before about the attachment, right? So this is a bit of a double whammy here. When in relationship, if there's an attachment, if it's an emotional attachment and there's that really fear-based attachment, then you've tried to secure yourself with another person, right? You've tried to secure yourself with that other person. That just can't happen. You can't be ever secured by another person in full. I'm talking security, actual security. So if you do that, then you leave the relationship stuck trying to secure each other. There is another way to think about relationships. And the other way to think about relationships is, instead of worrying where the body is and how we're talking to each other and are we getting fulfilled enough by each other, settle down, slow down, shut up for a second, honestly. Stop talking, stop trying, and just see what happens in between you guys. Feel what it's like to be in presence with each other. It's not even this isn't like a special cool thing. Like being in presence with each other is how you feel what the relationship is like. And that third space, whatever's happening in there, is your space to own, figure out, love, nurture, be responsible for, and watch it grow. Because that third space is only for you two. That's the beautiful bit about it. Like the whole the bow on this is like when you two come together, what's happening between you, that feeling, those subtleties, those sensations can only happen between you two. And when you start to see more and more and more and more into the uniqueness of the pairing, the heart opens and you get all the stuff that you want. Like you want the heart opening. You don't want the romance and the da-da-da-da-da. You want the heart opening. But the only way to do that is to figure out why you two have come together and what the hell is that about.
It's interesting that when you're sharing that, what just went through my brain is like my top closest 3 friends. And I was trying to try it on and I'm like, wow, it's that unique third experience space, third person space. And it's funny because the closest friends over the past 6 to 9 years in the industry now are the ones that I can sit with without saying anything for the longest.
Yeah.
And it's just, exactly. it feels looked after. But
looked after.
I just went and caught up with a friend last week, and 30 minutes into it, there was a bit of a delay in conversation and not too much. And now that you're saying it, I'm thinking, shit, I was feeling the energy of the third person space, which was like, this is done now. And so I was like, hey, I'm going to hit the road. I wouldn't have known that in the past. I would have been like, have you got a beer? Like, it would have been like, how do we fill the void, so to speak?
Yes, bingo.
That's fascinating because I think we can all relate to that. In the experience of communicating with another human being, whether they're a family or a friend, how comfortable do we feel in the silence, or how insecure do we need for everything to be busy?
Bingo, because that's the relationship. When you all stop talking, then you figure out what the relationship is.
Oh God. You just wrote yourself another webinar, Nat.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing it.
No, just joking. So let's finish with that. When you all stop talking, you figure out. I'm going to reword it. The minute you stop talking, you get a look into the depth of the quality of the relationship.
Yeah, you get to see where it's at, and it might be not nice or it might be nice, but it doesn't matter. You'll see where it's at.
Geez, a lot of us have created relationships off business, haven't we?
Oh, it gets dark in there.
It's funny, we all have that though. It's just so interesting to hear it so black and white. I don't think a lot of people would say it. Like I've got a couple of mates that I wouldn't hang out with unless we were playing golf. And like even now in a second, I'm thinking like, yeah, we're not, geez, I think the third person space is just us playing golf. And outside of that, there is none. Like
yeah. That's how you figure out time. Like that's how I figure out time investment into relationships. And I base a lot of things off that because it really orders you like fully.
Yeah, I'm massive on that. I've just never connected that time was almost an ingredient or a recipe to manage the third person space.
Yeah. So team, when you're listening to this, that's why I give Tommy 1 hour a month because he's just so disruptive.
How could you say that publicly on a podcast?
Our third space is so messy. It's so turbulent. Chaos.
I want to call you so many things right now.
Tommy's trying to cling. I'm trying to withdraw. We've got a mess going on.
Yeah, it's what protection strategies? Give me more. Go away.
No, chase me.
Oh God, we've probably just lost 90% of the listeners. Like, what are these two talking about? Yep. Sit with that for the rest of the day. Simmer in that. Think about your closest family, your friendships, and just ponder the idea of. I'm going to welcome you on an action step you can take is just sit with the thought of which people in your life do you sit with for longer than others and why. Just notice that and become aware of that time that you spend with people, and how much time goes by before, is it the third person space now? Was that the terminology?
Yeah.
Before the third person space is interrupted. And as Nat said on the start of the call, you know when something's being interrupted because you're suffering. So you either feel really insecure or you'll feel like the other person's really pissing you off. That's it, isn't it, Nat? You feel really insecure or you feel like the other person's pissing you off.
Yeah, I'm insecure all the time.
Here's drinking less and feeling fresh. Here's to creating more choice and freedom in our lives, team. At the end of the day, here's to building relationships that light our souls on fire. Nat and I have never worked with anyone who has incredibly nurtured, beautifully growing relationships in their lives physically, and that person still have problems with addictions like alcohol. So it's something to be aware of massively.
Hey, that's a good way to finish. That is bang on the money.
Big love. See you next week. Same time, same place.
Pretty good.